Hello, and welcome to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I'm Leah Drew, your host and mind-body healing guide. This podcast is for the awareness seeker ready to go deeper, create change, and feel more empowered over their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. My intention is to be a catalyst for you as we explore topics surrounding holistic health, mindset optimization, trauma healing, emotional intelligence, and much more. I'm so grateful to have you here and to support you as we evolve in mind, body, and spirit. Let's breathe in and out. Now, let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome back to the Mindful Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Leah Drew, and today I have a beautiful sister, friend, and mentor with me to talk about all things embodiment, all things healing, all things connecting with the earth in holistic views. Riya Rose is an embodied priestess, and I'm really excited to dive deeper into what exactly that means and how all you ladies out there might be able to apply this into your world. So Riya, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you too. It's always good to see you. I'm excited because I've personally been able to experience multiple different containers and environments with you, and it's been really beautiful witnessing you in your feminine energy. It's been a beautiful guiding light for me over the last year and a half, 2 years since I met you, as I really stepped more into my embodied feminine and really into understanding what femininity is to me and what that means to me. And being in different spaces with you has been honestly an amazing experience. So thank you so much for leading there. I'm really curious what being a priestess means to you, and wondering if you could share a little bit about that journey with us.
Yeah, I would love to. So the word priestess, I think we're seeing a lot used more and more in the social media space and just in general in our world. And to me, it has a very specific meaning. And so what a priestess means to me is essentially someone that's able to walk between realms, right? And by that, I mean, we have this physical realm that we live in, but there are all these other realms or dimensions, however you want to look at it. And the priestess is really able to stay connected and solid in this realm and walk between the other realms at the same time and come back with information, with guidance, and be able to do work in those realms that is, affecting and changing and creating different energetics in this realm. And the priestess, really what that word entails is that you have dedicated yourself to walking through initiations. And it takes a lot of willpower. It takes a lot of continuous dedication and showing up. For me, I went through a 13-month period with an elder priestess named Nikaya Seeds. That was a very specific initiation period of walking through all of these different archetypes, working with ancestors, and learning how to do these journeys and walking between realms. So it was a really specific initiation, but I think initially the initiation was brought about by my own embodiment, my own connection with the earth and my own mysticism that even showed me that was the path that I was walking, because I started out not even knowing what I was really doing.
I feel like that's a place where a lot of us find ourselves, is like, what am I doing? I don't know. This doesn't feel good. I need something else.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day I was listening to you speak on social media about how this concept of the priestess is potentially being misinterpreted in many areas and by many people. And I'm curious what some of those differences that you're seeing might be.
Yeah, I think this title used to really be reserved for the people that were gone through an initiatory period. And an initiation period is designed really, really specifically to strengthen all these different facets of you, to expose all these really difficult things about yourself, to do so much alchemy and shadow work within yourself. And it's like dying, and your whole world crumbles around you. And it's really hard. And so that word kind of denotes the people that are willing to walk into the fire in order to serve the collective, in order to do the most good in the world, and to be the highest version of themselves. What I'm seeing kind of that term being interpreted as someone who is just really feminine and really connected to the divine. When in actuality, that word, in my opinion, denotes somebody who has been initiated only. And there's a lot of different ways to be initiated, but it is a signifier of that initiatory process. And it's not something that we just get to like claim because we feel like now we're embodied, or now we're feminine, or now we're magical, and so we're just going to start calling ourselves this thing. It's in my opinion important that initiation process happens, so that title still carries the information that it's meant to convey to people, that I can walk between realms. I have gone through this initiation period. An elder has guided me through this process. And yeah, so that way it's kind of also protective, right? Because people are seeing their priestess and people are coming to them, and they're doing all this work, and they haven't been guided by an elder, and they haven't been shown, and they haven't been taught. I think there's a lot of damage that can be done there, honestly. Yeah, and then on the kind of egoic side of things, it's not a title that we use to just create an identity for ourselves, or a certain way that we look, or a certain way that we are perceived by others. It's a title that actually humbles you so deeply, because when you're initiated, you're so humbled. So instead of it, what I'm seeing it being used as, is this title of expansion of the ego, when in reality, that title crushes and kills your ego if it's gone through the right channels. So that's one way. And then I think the other thing I was feeling the other day with it, and this is something my teacher Nikaya was talking about recently too, and it was basically that a lot of the people using this term look like me, right? They're white, they're cisgender and skinny, and so I think what she's feeling, and what I was kind of in conversation about, was, is it a term that's going to create a feeling that people don't belong? They don't belong in my spaces. They don't belong in mystical ceremonial spaces. They don't belong in my sphere because they don't look like all the other people who are also using this term priestess. So that's another reason I started to wonder if it's a term I wanted to continue to identify as. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful process to recognize and to bring to our listener, is the fact that something can feel good for a particular time frame, and then through the wisdom that you receive, through the knowledge that you continue to connect deeper with, and through your experiences in life, sometimes it may start to lead you to have a different perspective on particular words, or particular identities. And I think that's a big part of that initiation period. And I don't think that there's just necessarily one. I think you go through many different initiations throughout your lifetime. And as you do, I think that it gives you different perspectives on the identities that you're choosing to hold, right? Like the hat that you're choosing to put on any given day, or during any particular like couple of years of your life. And so I love that you're looking at this identity and really looking at how it fits for you right now. I think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I'm always doing, because really any of the terms I call myself aren't terms that live inside of me as an identity. They're just terms I'm using so I can be understood in the outside world. Yeah, that's really my relationship to any of it. Even the word priestess, it's like you would think after going through all the things that made me take on that word. In general, I would be attached to it, but it actually is quite the opposite. I feel really unattached to being called that or not called that. So if it's not serving the highest good, if it's not me bringing people closer, if it's not inviting people in and making them feel like they can relate with me, my feeling is that I don't need it. So that's the thought process I'm in now. Still contemplating
Thank
that.
you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
When you stepped into your journey with the priestess and your journey through this energy, was there a particular initiation that you were navigating at that period of time in your life that was the catalyst for you seeking this out?
Oh yeah, very specific. um, yeah, so I was in ceremony in Joshua Tree in the desert. I was in a temple tree. It's this beautiful, beautiful tree. All of these trees grew together and created like a temple in the middle. And me and sister were sitting in this temple, and an initiation process just started happening. In the ceremony that we were in together, it just started occurring. And the earth kind of took everything and was like, everything is going to crumble now. Everything you know is going to die. Everything you think about yourself is going to die. You are going to be stripped bare. And you're on the priestess path now. And it is going to be hard. And it's just what you're supposed to do. And go find a teacher. And I walked out of that tree, and everything in my life proceeded to crumble. I let go of my yoga studio. My relationship fell apart. My house got hit by a tornado. All my stuff got destroyed. I moved. Like, everything in my life crumbled underneath me, like immediately, following that day. So, yeah, it was such a clear initiation. I mean, when the tornado hit my house, a tree literally fell on my altar directly down the middle and smashed the entire thing. A hole opened up above my harmonium and dumped water on it. It was so specific. And so, and it brought me to my knees. It brought me to my knees. I mean, there's even more things that happened. I could go on and on. Not a single area of my life was untouched. Not a single area of my identity was untouched. And the day I finalized selling my half of my yoga studio is the day that my cord that I got sent as like the beginning of my initiatory period came in the mail from my teacher, unexpectedly. So it really felt like something that picked me up and just took me with it. And not something that it wasn't really on my radar. It wasn't a word I had a relationship with. It wasn't something I decided to be or become. It really felt like just, okay, like you've done this in past lives, you're doing it again, you don't really have a choice, go. And everything is just going to keep crumbling, so you might as well walk the path and let go and surrender. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring all this up right now, because I actually just put up a post today on the power that plant medicines can have in bringing you to these new levels of awareness and recognizing that there's this new level of like alignment. It's like this realignment that happens. And the thing that I followed up with is be mindful, because after that occurs, the universe takes you on a wild freaking ride, and you better buckle up, because once you recognize that realignment is necessary, then it's almost just like you're thrown into this portal where everything starts to it just falls into place. And all these things that happen to you that are those like things you just like you can't make up. It's like the spiritual stories that you're just like, this is literally what happened. And it takes you on the ride, and the only thing that you can do is surrender to the changes, and simultaneously recognizing that, wow, this is really challenging and also super beautiful, because I see that this is needed, and I see that this is necessary, and I see that this is the path for me right now. And it sounds like that what you navigated through this journey as you initiated down the priestess path sounds like it was quite challenging, but it also sounds like it brought you into this space where you learned how to be in both of those realms, in both of those worlds.
Mhm.
And I know you and I were talking a little bit about that before we hit record today, around these two worlds, the underworld and the present world and the above world. And I recently just finished the book Women Who Run with the Wolves, that I think every woman should read as a rite of passage in their lifetime, because it's powerful and it brings you to this concept that you're talking about around being able to be in both spaces and learning to balance
Mhm.
yourself in the present while being able to be in that underworld, be with the darkness, be with the shadows, and also be in the above world, right? Like be with the play, be with the journey, be with the abundance and the magic that is there for you simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And of course for me, I didn't realize I was starting my initiatory process with my Saturn return. So I don't know if everybody's is that crazy. I just doubled down. I was like, let me start get my initiation and be in my Saturn return at the same time. So I mean, I don't think everybody will always have it quite as extreme as I did. But yeah, it's this idea that even on the most simple levels of like within joy is grief, because inherently that joyful, blissful situation will end and you know it's temporary. And so everything when you look at like I call it the lower earth realm and this realm, it's like opposite sides of a coin and one is never really existing without the other. So um learning to hold both of those and not push away that grief and realize that that grief actually feeds the joy growing bigger and bigger and bigger as much as you're willing to allow yourself to stay rooted in that darkness and in the underworld. You can grow exponentially up, right, like the roots of a tree, and bloom into joy deeper and bloom into bliss deeper, but not really without fully embodying and allowing grief and fully embodying and allowing rage and all of these emotions that are uncomfortable.
Mm. I know the Women Who Run with the Wolves book talks a lot about how being able to be in that duality and be with both leads you to that expression of the wild feminine. And I'm curious what that means to you.
Mm. I think the wild feminine is really this allowing of all of the programs to fall away and your body to start to lead. And this sounds so much more simple than it really is, because that is not a comfortable journey to go and sit in a body, especially if you've been living in your mind most of your life, like most of us have. Most of us have been in our thoughts and living in our head and ignoring all of the emotions running through our body, all the energetics running through our body, all the communications of our body. And when you sink into that and you really start to face it and sit and bring all of the discomfort closer, you have to make changes in your life. I mean, it just will. You will start to choose differently. When you start to listen to your body and live within its cycles, you can't continue to live in this world that expects you to show up exactly the same every single day with exactly the same amount of energy and be the same. It's just not possible, because we're on these like shorter cycles, especially as women, of our moon cycle, and then we're on a collective cycle, the organism of the earth of which we're a part, that's going through all of the seasons. And how can we possibly expect ourselves to show up exactly the same every day at the same time with the same amount of energy when we look all around us and the earth is never doing that? And in fact, if flowers bloomed all year round, the plant would die, because it takes so much energy for a plant to create a flower that if it had to continuously do that, most species would die. And that's what we're asking of ourselves. We're asking ourselves to bloom and be pretty and delicate and perfect and energetic and vibrant every single day. And when we step into the wild feminine, we have to really face and walk through the gates of all the shame and all the guilt and all the ways that we are punishing ourselves for not being able to do that. And that's highly uncomfortable. But you take all of that shame and guilt and transmute it. And for me, at least, it turned into rage at first. After I broke through some guilt and some shame, then I found rage. And that really allowed me to fuel the unapologetic stepping into my authenticity and new ways of being that are so outside of this this matrix, this world that we've created together. So that's what it means to me. I mean, it's incredibly courageous. It's an incredibly courageous thing to embody.
And like you said, it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard being able to be with all of the things happening in you all at the same time and make space for all of it without allowing like the outside world to come in and distract you from it or take you away from it. And yeah, it takes practice too. Like you don't just get there overnight. Having compassion for yourself. I know that's been such a huge part of my journey, is being able to have compassion for myself when it gets hard and when things come up or when I look away from it for a minute and then I'm like, oh, okay, I need to look back at this, right? And like you said, there's so many synchronicities with the earth here. And when you choose to not look at it and when you choose to not be with it, and if you keep pushing it off, eventually either your body's going to tell you or the universe is going to tell you, like quite loudly.
Yes. Yeah. It whispers at first and then it continues to get louder and louder and louder. And I love that. It's like what I always say, we can't punish ourselves to wholeness or wellness. It's not going to happen. So it's also a process of learning to unapologetically love yourself and meet all of those parts of you and find where those voices originated that tell you that you're not enough or your body should be different or you should be different. It's meeting all of that and being courageous enough to really look at it and examine it and reprogram it, which takes a long time because we're not only reprogramming our own lifetime of beliefs and habits, we're reprogramming for all of our ancestors that came before us and all the women that came before us. So of course it's going to take time, and of course we're going to take breaks, and of course we're going to get it wrong sometimes. So yeah, I like the compassion.
I think it's interesting too, because one of the things that the book Women Who Run with the Wolves brought up towards the end is how women go through these different stages in 7-year periods, and how in each one of those time periods of their life there's like a different theme that women learn to work through. And it's almost, when I was reading it, this aspect of like the initiation came up for me around like, wow, like, okay, every 7-year period ish, right, give or take, we as women get to navigate different forms of initiations and different forms of wisdom and much different experiences based off of where we're at in the world, what we understand of ourselves, what we understand of the world around us, and how we understand us to actually interact with the world around us. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And just as we have been talking about this aspect of initiation, it was like, yeah, like there's always this initiation to go deeper into, to connect deeper, to continue connecting with that wild woman within yourself, to continue going deeper into that embodiment of yourself as a woman. And men can do this in the same aspect, just in different ways. It might look a little bit different for them, but it's still important for them to continue connecting with the earth and connecting with their feminine, not just their masculine, to continue connecting with their deepest embodied self.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody can walk this path of initiation, and I mean, lately I've been working with just as much men as I am women, and I think the thing that really helps as we're walking through all of these journeys is archetypal work, right? Is finding an archetype that you resonate with and connecting with it and learning the lessons of that archetype is so helpful without overly identifying with it or overly taking it on and becoming too attached to it, but just kind of relating with that archetypal energy and what does it mean to hold that in a way that is balanced, and what did that look like for me, and what aspects of this am I expressing. And I think that's where men can really come in, because they don't have this moon cycle that's kind of guiding them, but they still have the seasons and the earth, and they still have these archetypal frameworks that they can root into and work through within themselves. And that's something that I find really helpful for men and women. I mean, women archetypal work is huge as well, but for men especially, to be able to anchor into something that they can relate and find within themselves to help the process and journey.
And we're all here to go deeper if you choose to. And like you said, we're not just doing that healing for ourselves, but also for our ancestors and our DNA and our genetics and everybody that came before us, so that everybody that comes after us can experience something slightly different, or maybe significantly different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty and power of it, is that you really are changing your ancestral lines backward and forward when you're doing this type of work, and when you're just becoming a more embodied person in general.
I have a quote here that I would love to share out of the book that like really impacted me, and it kind of goes into what we're talking about with the underworld and the above world. Before we shift into some embodiment stuff, you okay if I share?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. The time with the wild woman is hard at first. To repair injured instinct, banish naivety, and over time to learn the deepest aspects of psyche and soul, to hold on to what we have learned, to not turn away, to speak out for what we stand for. All this takes a boundless and mystical endurance. When we come up out of the underworld after one of our undertakings there, we may appear unchanged outwardly, but inwardly we have reclaimed a vast and womanly wildness. On the surface, we are still friendly, but beneath the skin, we are most definitely no longer tame.
Yes. I love that so much.
Yeah, that one hit me. I was like, oh yeah. So in all of what we're speaking about, you've brought up the term embodiment a few times. And I know embodiment for me has been a huge part of my healing journey, healing my physical pain, healing my mental pain, healing my emotional pain, trauma, and also really supporting me with connecting to spirit and expanding my spiritual understanding. So I'd love for you to explain a little bit about what embodiment is and means to you, and how it can support us in our journeys.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, for me, this process started, I started getting really into Buddhism when I started my spiritual journey and studying primarily Zen Buddhism, and meditating every day. And this started in middle school for me. And I was meditating every day, and I thought, wow, pat myself on the back. You're doing such a good job. You're meditating every day. Like, you're really doing the thing. And I did that for years. And finally, yoga enters my world. And I realized, once I started to get into these processes of yoga, how much I was escaping by meditating every day, and really living so in my head. So it was this process of for me, a deeply feminine awakening of doing yoga in my home and crying afterward, and finding all of these feelings trapped in the tissues of my body, and going and sitting with them and learning from them, and then beginning to track my moon cycles and work with the moon every full and new moon and notice how my body was aligned with that. And getting into herbalism, right? Because there were parts of me that were still unhealed, and really noticing how much wholeness, wellness, and spirituality isn't possible unless we're in direct communication with our body. So I think there's this idea that to be embodied, what we do is we sit up in our mind and we witness our body, and that's embodiment. That's what so many people are taught to do. And in my opinion, that's not embodiment at all. There's this term, I think they're called the Anglo-Levi tribe. I might be saying that wrong, but they have a sense. So like we have taste, touch, smell, hearing, and I think their word for this, it's called sesalame, and it means like feel from flesh inside, if you translate it directly. And to me, that word completely encapsulates what embodiment is. It's that continuous line of information we're getting by living completely in the present moment and experiencing the world fully through our body, through our energy body, through our feeling, and through our intuition at the same time. And we basically can't be in our heads if we're doing that. It's really not possible. And so it's actually like making a home here in the body primarily and receiving the world in its fullness through the experience of the body first, and allowing the mind to be the worker bee of the body instead of the mind running and controlling what the body is doing. We're intuitively being led. We're intuitively being guided. We're intuitively receiving the information around us by inhabiting our being fully, and then putting the mind to work to go, okay, my body needs this. And the mind goes and makes the plan to go get it. Yeah. So that, I hope that answers your question, but that's my relationship to what embodiment means.
I definitely am with you on that one. To be embodied is to be within your body and to be able to communicate with your body. I think that your body is this vessel of pure communication. And if you tune into what's happening, it is a beautiful guide forwards. And oftentimes when you're in that logical brain, I've found that the steps forwards, you try to figure them out versus really like feeling them out and understanding what you need. And instead you're thinking what you need. And that doesn't get you to the same place. It might get you somewhere, but you're likely going to look back and recognize that what you think you needed is actually really not what you actually needed. And I often say to my clients, your pain, your discomfort, your symptoms are a message from your body to your body asking for more love and attention. And so kind of like we were talking about earlier, right? With like being more with that underworld, when these uncomfortable feelings like rage or maybe anxiety or discomfort in any way come up, being able to be with them and give them more attention and understand what they're saying to you. And I think doing so, like you're talking about, through that physical body, through something like yoga, through something like dance, something where you're able to really be with what is within you, is a great way to navigate the journey forwards, a more clear way, in my opinion.
Yeah. And really, I don't think we can't get to wellness. We can't get to wholeness without having a conversation with our body, because nobody is going to come save us. I mean, even if they try to give us an herb or a pill or anything like that, we are the ones that hold the keys to the information of our body. So without us being in touch and in tune with if this herb is working or what is happening in our body energetically, without us being able to provide that information, even if we are seeking help outwardly, we're not going to get anywhere, because every single person in body needs something different. And every single person in body is going to have a very unique path to wellness, to wholeness, to their spiritual awakening. And when you're in tune with your body, you're able to, even if you get help and guidance which I recommend. I mean, it's so amazing to be held on your path. You have to still be the person that is translating what your body is saying, is telling the person what's alive in your body and what's happening in your body. And to do that, you have to have that line of communication. You have to be in your body.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. And especially with society, like telling us there's this one way to do it. I think that our current Western medical system really disempowers us and prevents us from tapping into that wisdom of our bodies, and says that there's this one way, that this pill is going to fix you, that this treatment is going to be the end all be all. And it is a beautifully laid out system in a box that says, here, I'm going to deliver this to you, and this is the way. And in reality, the only way is what you know within yourself to be the way for you, not what someone else tells you. And, you know, like you're saying, to navigate any journey, any health, any healing, any personal development journey forwards, it requires a unique approach. It requires looking outside the box, asking yourself what you need, tuning into yourself after you give yourself what it is that you think you need, and then understanding if that was supportive and if you need to shift or adapt, and taking a more holistic approach to supporting yourself. And I know that you, like myself, are very deeply connected and believe in taking a very holistic approach to health and wellness and healing. And I'm curious, what does that look like for you when you're working with clients and helping them navigate this quote unquote holistic approach?
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, usually by the time people get to me, they have seen all kinds of people in the Western box. And not only have they not been helped, but they are somewhat traumatized by feeling so disempowered, so unheard, and encouraged to actually not listen to their body and actually do what the professionals were saying in whatever realm they're in instead. And not that all people in Western medicine are that way, but it's inherent in most of it. I think it has its place, but by the time people get to me, I think the first thing, they're just like, so many people cry just from being heard and validated and encouraged to trust themselves. That is often like the first medicine they need when they come to me, is just, they've been through to the doctors, they've been to the specialist, they've gone through all of these things. Some of my clients have had cancer and they've been through so much. And it's like, when they get to me, it's the first time they've ever been heard. And that breaks my heart completely. And I'm grateful I can offer that to them. And when I'm looking at it, what I'm really doing is I'm looking at it from every layer of the being, right? So we have the physical body, we have the emotional body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, the mental body, and then we have our soul. And when I'm looking at somebody, I see all of that. And we're not just working on the physical, we're not just working on the energy, we're not just working on the spiritual or soul body or the mental body. All of them are feeding into one another to create this being. And usually if there's an energetic disturbance on one, it's creating a disturbance on all the levels. And so I really am also using this kind of vitalist herbalism or even Ayurvedic approach of looking at the elements within a person. So are they primarily running like fire, hot, right? In Ayurveda, you call that pitta. Are they primarily running cold and damp and earthy, and that's like that kapha energy? Are they primarily air and cold? Are they that vata energy? And really looking at how the elements are presenting themselves in their constitution when they come to me, and which ones might be out of balance. And that applies to every single level of their being. So what spiritual practices I recommend, what movement practices I recommend, breathwork practices I recommend, what ceremonies and rituals we do together, what herbs I recommend, what dietary changes, what mindset work. everything, every layer of the body we're touching on, I'm looking through this lens and seeing. So even if two people come to me and say, well, I have anxiety, one, where is that anxiety coming from and why? What is that communication and intelligence of your being that's creating this red flag for you to lean in closer to? And two, okay, one person might have this very airy kind of anxiety that is the air element run wild in their being. And another person might have this anxiety that's actually this really heavy earth element. That's like they're anxious because everything feels like it's moving so slow and it's so heavy that it becomes like you're so weighted down that you feel anxious, like you can't move forward and you feel stuck. And so that's very like seemingly the same issue, but in reality, treated completely differently and worked with completely differently. So that's kind of the framework I'm coming from. And often it's completely, channeled and intuitive as well. And I'll get like downloads for people for certain things. But from my personal perspective, that's where I'm working from. And it's beautiful to watch what happens when you balance on every level of the being.
Sounds like a very inclusive approach, which is, in my opinion, what makes up a good holistic lens and a holistic practice. And you're bringing in a lot of those connections to Mother Nature, to the earth, to the environment. And I know personally, through knowing you, that connection to earth is so important to you. And I'm curious why, and I'm curious what wisdom that earthly connection brings us as humans.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of whys. I'll say the first ones. I mean, for one thing, we are part of this organism. The earth is one giant organism, and we're part of it. And so to pretend like we can't have a connection with the earth is impossible. Even if we are ignoring that connection or trying to run away from that connection, it's still present. And because we are just part of this organism. And the second reason is that the earth is a living library. Within the earth is all of the information about everything in the universe, right? Like you look at the way that the bark is on a tree, and if you meditate for long enough and hard enough and receive the wisdom of that tree deeply enough in your being, you can learn so much more than just what the bark on the tree looks like. You can learn about the ordered chaos that the universe operates within. And so to be on a spiritual path and to not utilize this vast well of information available to us by simply being present and accessing our heart space and opening our heart space to the electromagnetic frequencies that are seeping off every living thing on this planet. I mean, you can learn herbalism straight from plants. You can learn directly from animals. Why would you not? Why would you not do that? And then to just be healthy, whole beings, right? We have to accept our place in this collective organism of Gaia.
And there's so much healing that the earth has to offer us. So much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that plant medicine in many different fashions are something that has been a very powerful tool for you in many ways. And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit on how plant medicines have been a bridge for healing, not just for you, but for also your clients.
Yeah, plant medicine has been a massive part of my journey and the process of rewiring. And I think that's really where they shine often. And it would depend on which plant medicine we're talking about, right? Like for psilocybin, I think one of the major ways that it works is on the rewiring of the neural channels in our brain. So we get to actually have a chance to change them without it being quite so difficult. And then also, I feel that particular mushrooms are really good at teaching us how to communicate with the earth again, because the earth communicates so differently than the way we communicate as humans in our modern world, and communicate with the divine again, and with maybe ancestors or guides, and also communicate more deeply with other people and see through the identities we've created in the mask that we wear, and feel their energy. It makes you so sensitive to be able to feel the energy of everyone around you. So those are a few of the ways that I see them really, really changing people's lives, is simply giving them the opportunity to choose different patterns, choose different ways of thinking, choose different perspectives, and breaking free from even the cage of not even realizing you're in a certain thought pattern, right? They break you out of that and make you realize, like, wow, I was in a cage of my own making and I didn't even know. I didn't even see it.
I think that's a beautiful explanation. I definitely resonate with that. And for me personally, plant medicines have been a huge part of my journey. And they're like this big magnifying glass for you to look at that cage and look at the walls you've built around you and those invisible lines that are holding you back. And you get to then choose. You always get to choose. You always get to make a choice. It's always your choice to do so. And there's also so much empowerment that you find in that. And being able to look at your own stuff, look at what's there, look at where you're holding yourself back, and then choose to change it.
Yeah. And that's what, I mean, when people talk about integration, that's essentially what you're doing, is all of the things that the medicine exposed to you that are patterns, choices, things that you're doing in your life that aren't in alignment with really your soul and the frequency you're here to carry. That is what integration looks like, and why it can be so difficult, because they go back into their life and they go, well, to make a different choice, it would mean changing this or changing that, or having this really difficult conversation with a partner or a loved one, and oh my gosh, it's actually going to be really uncomfortable to integrate all of this. It's actually going to make me have to step way outside of my comfort zones and way outside of the ways that I was living before, and make a lot of changes. And that requires a lot of courage. And that's what integration to me really means, is that you are applying the lessons that the plant medicine gave you in your day-to-day life, and starting to walk this new path. And that looks like letting go of a lot of your old path and a lot of your old identities and in the comfort zone that you were once in. And it takes a lot of courage.
But it does. And it does. And it's beautiful work.
Yeah.
Riya, I'm curious, you and I have talked about a lot of different aspects of healing, of growing, of embodiment, and a lot of what you see in your clients as well. I'm curious, taking a step back and a little bit more of a larger view of the world and society around us. What are some of the challenges that you see the majority of people in society or society at large facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I honestly feel like this embodiment piece, if everybody really, as a collective, stepped into connection with their body again, and started to live in integrity with that, the world would change overnight. Because it really takes us each being connected to this innate wisdom in our being to create new systems, and to say that we want to be closer to the earth and be in connection with the earth and be in right relationship with the earth, because that's obviously one of the main issues that we're having as a collective, and this denial of the earth. And that seeps into every single aspect of our life. Like, we can create a box that's better, that will serve us, that will make us more well, that's separate from the earth. And that goes into wellness, that goes into what we eat, that goes into how we live, the homes that we live in, the communities that we live in. Every single one of these aspects that you could kind of zoom in on and say, well, we don't have community, well, we don't have homes that are healthy, well, we don't have food, well, we don't have, ways to connect with the divine that are healthy. Like, if you zoom out and you really see what's feeding into all of that, it's this inherent disconnection with ourselves and with the earth that we're living in. And once we once we re-embody ourselves and start to trust the communications with our body and our innate wisdom again, we would inherently make collectively different decisions in all of those areas.
I love that response, and I'm so on board. I see it too. I think that connection with self and deeper connection with the world around you is ultimately what's going to support the world around you and shifting and changing. And that embodiment piece being a huge, huge, huge key in doing so. Riya, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your wisdom today, and for sharing your experiences along your journey and with being a priestess. And I appreciate you being here. It's always a pleasure to have you in my space and be in yours. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continued conversations. And yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you guys so much for being here, and we will chat soon. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today and for continuing to opt in to your inner work. If you found value in this conversation, please share it on social media or with someone you know that values both healing and growth. And I'd also like to invite you to join the Holistic Healing Tribe. This is my private community full of self-healers who are on a mission to optimize their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Click the link in the show notes to join the tribe. And when you join, I'll send you my favorite things that have made the biggest impact on my health, my healing, and my growth. And finally, if you're anything like me and deeply care about seeing a more mindful approach to human evolution, please leave a review to help us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact on the world around you.